Book your calendars, boys. The next Total War game is being announced in early December of this year, 2025, so place your bets now. Is it Star Wars, World War I, Empire 2, Medieval 3, 40K, Redwall, Grey's Anatomy, Twilight, or Caveman Total War, set in the Pleistocene epic with sticks, stones, and woolly rhinos? Just a bunch of hairy Neanderthals beating each other's butts. Whatever it is, expect it to be released in fall or early winter 2026. There's generally an 8 to 12 month period between announced trailer and release, but a delay of the game, which happens pretty frequently in this industry nowadays, would have a decent shot of kicking release back into early 2027. It's a big day for the series, the 25th anniversary of Total War games, a series I've been playing for most of my life now, and whose first title I touched was Shogun 1 25 years ago. I think I was 7 years old when I first booted it up. I got 2 copies with the help of my parents, one for a friend after a birthday party at Bowl America, and one for myself, and it was quite literally the first game that made me start falling in love with military history and PC gaming in general. A gateway into Age of Empires, Age of Kings, Rainbow Six, Battlefield 2, Fear, and eventually a long career on YouTube with the series that started it all. And as part of that 25-year celebration, the good folks at Horsham HQ are working on a presentation which will unveil, it sounds like, every single project they are currently working on upcoming and into the distant future. They have confirmed that includes fantasy and historical projects, so there's a good chance there will be something here for everybody. As many of you know, I expect this to be the long-awaited Total War Warhammer 40k. I've been covering that potential trilogy off and on for the last 5 or 6 years. Expect that to ramp up again soonish, or at least until it gets deconfirmed. But yeah, it just makes too much business sense given the relationship they have with James Workshop and Jimmy Space, and it's guaranteed sales in a way that more risky or unproven settings would not be. If they don't just utterly shit the bed and fumble the bag, it would pretty comfortably become the best-selling Total War game of all time, if not completely blow previous metrics out of the water. Whatever it is, these announcements are going to be huge. They're producing an entire reveal show dedicated around them, something they have never done before in their company's history, so it'll be a fan favorite regardless whether it be historical or fantasy. Sounds like it's probably going to be both, whether that's Medieval 3, Empire 2, or Warhammer 40k. Like I said, the plans to show off multiple titles here could very well be 2 or 3 of those things. Now, I understand that has made people concerned about the life cycle for Warhammer 3 support, and there's been some doom and gloom about the devs potentially dropping the project once this next game is revealed and released. And with much of the main team seemingly having been moved over to that new project that's being announced in December and coming out next year, and CA Sofia in Bulgaria seemingly taking over development of DLC, that the entire project might just be shelved, that it's living on borrowed time. And to that, I would say, I understand how you feel. I understand why there might be some trepidation there, but in my opinion, there is not much reason to fear the end of Warhammer 3 support anytime soon, certainly not within the next year, year and a half. Certainly, the timescales between major content drops have gotten longer, although to be fair, the frequency and size of major patches between those DLCs has also gotten quite a bit larger. But as long as the DLCs are solid and making money, Creative Assembly can and probably will continue supporting Immortal Empires for many years still to come. I'm not particularly worried on that front. And if I'm not particularly worried on that front, when my livelihood is directly tied to covering Total War games and obviously other games too, then y'all probably shouldn't be super worried either. Obviously, it still heavily depends on that caveat. They have to sell. No business on the planet would continue making things that are just hemorrhaging money in this particular situation. There are loss leaders and other business situations where you would, but not in this particular situation that CA's in right now. They're not going to keep making things if it just doesn't sell and they're just bleeding money everywhere. But Thrones of Decay and Omens of Destruction sold pretty well. They were relatively well received, and there are still some serious heavy hitters waiting for their day of reckoning in this trilogy. People that have been waiting for a very long time. Thankwall, Nagash, Neferata, in that upper echelon of Warhammer Fantasy icons that we've talked about many times in the past. Beyond that, there's still tons of lords and characters left. There's still Dogs of War, the potential for CA to partner with Games Workshop and make yet another race like Resh, Ind, Nippon. Not saying that those things will necessarily happen, just that it's a possibility, and for all we know, that process may have already begun. Anyways, all that to say, as long as it sells, CA will continue to make stuff, even if the gaps are a bit longer than they were closer to launch. And it's a good thing for the company to have a competent dev like Sophia working on extra projects while the main team works on a new game. Because once the new thing comes out, there will still be downtime between faction drops and expansions, which would be perfect to fill with ongoing Immortal Empires content. There's history of that too. Rome 2 DLC never sold half as well as Warhammer content did, and they got a whole freaking new campaign with Empire Divided like 5 years later, while active development was ongoing for other projects like Three Kingdoms. I actually think Empire Divided was Sophia's first big project for Creative Assembly. It's a big reason why they were bought by CA England in the first place, to help work on other things while the main team works on big titles. On top of that, patch 6.2 is coming next week, overhauling the item system from drops to a complete and total rebalance of the ones currently in the game, making them more rare but more impactful and powerful in attempts to cut down on drop rates of trash and inventory annoyances with fusing or deleting a bunch of them all at once. This is a complete and total overhaul of the system, rebalancing, I believe, basically every item in the game, not counting ones tied to legendary lords. Rare items will now be able to be fused into unique items, and many new ones are being added, including the Fellblade, the Unholy Gromril and Warpstone Abomination that laid low the famed Necromancer Nagash. If you remember, the first time the Council of 13, the Skaven, ever unanimously agreed on anything was freeing Alcatizar the Conqueror from the dungeons of Nagashizar, and because they were too cowardly to face the Great Necromancer in war themselves, gave unto the King of Khemri the most powerful weapon ever wielded by a mortal in Warhammer Fantasy. Its horrible energies corrupt and ultimately kill its wielder, but imbue them with superhuman durability and might, transforming them into a hero or villain of legend. Also coming are the 8 Burning Books of Khorne, which will come with some major dilemmas, but uniting them will have major impacts on your faction and the campaign map at large. Blood Knights with Sword and Shield, an anti-infantry variant built for the grind with an absolutely bomb-ass unit card, will also be added in this update, as well as Hobgoblin Bolt Throwers. Slightly less rickety and more efficient contraption than their goblin counterparts, because hobgoblins can actually aim. These will be uniquely accessible in the early game for Chaos Dwarfs and will not be tied to the forge or unit caps. So that really begs the question, what do you all truly want and expect to see when all this goes down in early December? Those things might not be the same, obviously expectation and what you want. We all have deep dark wishes that may never come to pass. But if it's true that we get reveals, or at least big-time hints for multiple titles, including both fantasy and historical, what is the best possible outcome for you? And what is the absolute worst that would leave you broken, dejected, and maybe crying in a corner? Doesn't seem like the end of this franchise is imminent. If they're working on multiple big titles and continuing to work on Warhammer 3, that's a lot that they're juggling. But is it 40K? What many of us have been discussing for the last 5+ years. And what would that mean? What would it come with? A new engine? Huge overhauls to combat? What would the campaign look like? Would it be something to test the waters first instead, like Empire 2 or World War I on that new engine to get a better grasp on vehicle combat and squad-based tactics before taking that plunge into 40K? Or have they fallen out with Games Workshop and they're just not going to make it at all, or just don't think they can because it'd be too difficult? Would it finally be that long-awaited Medieval 3, stretching from the feudal ages to the Renaissance with a massive campaign map spanning 500 years into the age of early gunpowder and pike and shot? Will it be all those, or none of those, and instead something else entirely out of left field? I don't know, man. Grey's Anatomy Total War sounds pretty good to me. Will it be McSteamy or McDreamy who carries the day and forges an empire in Meredith Grey's heart? Or will all the disparate hospital factions randomly die in a plane crash endgame scenario purely for shock value? Only time will tell. See you in the next one.